When you go to all these shows and you see all of these kids and their involvement, it really hits you. I think the on-farm experiences, we've been blessed with just amazing cattle. Both places that we've been to, Quiet Cove and Oakfield Corners, we've judged national level cattle in their prime. It all capped off with the 60 plus at World Dairy Expo, where they're outside of the ring. World Dairy Expo typically always has an associate judge, but I think we saw Harrisburg with 50 plus winter calves. You can go to any show across the country and you're gonna see quality cattle.
Welcome to Holstein Connections, where we share the latest stories, insights, and news from Holstein Association USA and beyond. The largest dairy cattle breed association in the world, Holstein Association USA provides leadership, information, and services to help dairy producers worldwide be successful. Whether you're in the barn, on the road, or just tuning in for your dose of dairy news, we're glad you're here. This is Holstein Connections.
Welcome back to the Holstein Connections podcast. Today I have the opportunity to chat with Tim Ziemba, Holstein Connections' first returning guest. Glad to have you back on.
I'm glad to be back. I'm excited about talking about some things with the National Show Program.
That is our topic today. We will be talking all about the National Holstein Show Program and Holstein USA Judges List. With Tim's experience as Holstein Association USA's National Show Coordinator, we'll cover updates to the National Show Program, look ahead to 2026, and dive into the Holstein USA Judges Conference. So Tim, as the National Show Coordinator, explain your responsibilities and how they relate to the Holstein Association USA Show Committee.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start to get a little more perspective on the show committee with Holstein Association. The Holstein Association president decides a group of people who will be part of the show committee. They typically serve a 2 to 3 year term, and then I work as the staff liaison to that program. I work with the National Show chair, who currently is Josh Wright from Idaho. So my main responsibilities with that is to guide 2 meetings throughout the year. I set the agenda for that. I set kind of the stats, give everybody a little bit of idea of what's gone through the year, how things are going. The 2 big topics that we hit on are the National Show Program, which is essentially kind of what I call the rule book or the guidebook for our show program through the year for all of our national shows. And then secondly, the Holstein Association Judges List. So those are the 2 main topics we kind of go through every year, try to reevaluate them. Our second meeting through the year is typically more focused on the judges list and approval of our judges list.
And then beyond working with the show committee, the National Show Coordinator also works closely with each show throughout the year. Explain some of those duties.
So then beyond the show committee, the kind of the day-to-day work with the show program is setting our roster for our staff members who work all of the national shows. In 2025, there were 12 National Holstein shows, so we typically send the regional sales rep for that area will work that show along with an additional Holstein staff member. And the main duties of our staff that work shows is to ensure identification at the shows, make sure we have the proper ownership, especially when we get past the junior deadline, making sure that the proper junior is the owner of that animal for the junior shows. And then we also kind of do your regular rep duties, whether there's transfers to be made, anything that needs to be done in regards to Holstein Association work. And then we also try to provide each show as much help as possible. Every show's run a little differently. Every show has a different management, and so certain shows need more help, certain shows need less help. So we try to be a fill-in for help when we can at these shows.
Yeah, for sure. I do think it's important to have that involvement when it comes to our staff members being involved in those shows. I know I've had the pleasure of working on a couple shows, and it always seems to be a good kind of way for Holstein to show face at these national shows throughout the year.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for our staff to have direct contact with our members. I've always kind of said that you're not going to have more members in one spot other than maybe a national convention than our national shows. And so it's a great opportunity to catch up with people and show the presence of the Holstein Association.
I know that the people is kind of what you see as maybe one of the more enjoyable parts about this role. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't think it's just me, but I know that the feedback I get when I assign staff to a show, and it's always interesting because I'll ask a staff member, I'm like, do you want to work a different show than you did last year? Do you want to go to a new area? And it's typical, the answer I get from most of us, no, I want to do the show that I did last year. And I think that's a direct result. If you've done one of these shows a couple years, you really develop a bond with the people that are there, the management, along with the exhibitors. And so it's always been fascinating to me as the manager, and as many shows as I go to, you just really get excited about seeing the different set of people at each show. And I think that's what really makes, our show program really a great experience.
Yeah, and then is there anything that maybe surprised you when you stepped into the National Show Coordinator role?
I think one of the things that surprised me most is I was going to all of these shows, and I think that I've now been to almost all of the shows, maybe without 3 of them that I probably haven't been to. To be honest, it's the quality of the cattle. I know that, you can go to any show across the country and you're going to see quality cattle. And I always find it fascinating, especially, you see these cattle in the spring and you're kind of just seeing these animals for the first time. It's the animals returning from last year and see what they look like. And then you follow them through the year, how they develop. And then always really is exciting when you get towards fall, you're like, all right, these animals are all going to show up against each other in Madison, Wisconsin. So you're just kind of like, well, how does this animal compare to that animal? And, those are the things that are really fun. But I think that surprise has been just the sheer quality across the country.
Yeah, and I know that as Holstein in general, I think that's been one of the perks as having you as the National Show Coordinator is really at the root being a cow guy. And that really shows through in the work that you do.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I've spent my whole life, with registered cattle. I've been showing since I was probably 5 years old. So it's definitely part of my life. It's definitely one of the things that's always interested me and kept me active in the industry even today. So yeah, it's definitely a great part of being the National Show Coordinator.
One of the other things you mentioned was attending a lot of the national shows throughout the country. And so you have attended probably 90% of the shows throughout the country over the last few years. And give us an idea of maybe what unique things that you see from some of these shows here in the U.S.
I'll start off mentioning the people again. Every show has its unique set of people that you come to know and come to understand. The one thing that I think is also unique is the style of each show. And I'll throw the Western Spring National out there in Richmond, Utah. For one, if you ever have the opportunity to go to the Richmond show, you're going to see scenery that you're not going to typically see at any other show. It's just kind of one of the most exciting places to go to in the spring where the temperature is getting nice. You still have snow-capped mountains. Honestly, it's one of my favorite places to be in general. But then the show itself is just such a unique experience because it's, a smaller group of exhibitors with larger strings. Breeder and exhibitor is still just a big focus. Like, there's such competition there for those awards that maybe at some other shows this has become the back burner to having class winners or a specific cow. It's kind of that whole breeding cattle in that area. One of the things that we do also is make sure that the proper Best Bred and Owned award winner is given to each class. At that show, it's almost always in the top 2 or 3 animals is your Best Bred and Owned. A lot of breeder animals there. One of the other experiences is really unique if you get a chance, especially if you have kids, is a Youth Classic in Iowa, which is one of our more recent national shows, a standalone junior show. It's actually currently the only junior show that is not involved with an open show. And I can say that the experience at the Youth Classic is really unlike any other because you really get that feel that this is junior run. You don't see a lot of fitters from outside of the area, a lot of kids doing their own clipping, taking care of their own animals. You get that kind of camping experience where everyone's there camped out. And then the awards they give out are just, it's amazing. You can walk away with some pretty cool gear at that show. And the quality of it is really good. I really appreciate that Youth Classic. But again, all the shows kind of have their unique things about, as you go to these shows every year, like when you go to the Northeast Spring National, which is close to Buffalo, you're getting Tim Hortons coffee. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I will say their milkshakes are second to none. Like, you just know you're going to end up having a milkshake at the end of every day. So those are really cool, like little things about each show that make the job kind of fun.
For sure. And I think it's cool that I've had the opportunity to attend both those two main shows that you talked about with Richmond and the Youth Classic. And I do think that those are two of the most unique shows out there. They just do some pretty cool things. And that Richmond, Utah area is just so picturesque with the mountains, like you mentioned. Over the years, a couple of shows have been added to the National Holstein Show list. Can you share how some of those newly added shows have grown or improved since their approval to that list?
Yeah, so last year we added the Northeast Summer National Show in New York, which they already have the Northeast Spring National Show, but that is out in the western part of the state. Their summer show is out in the eastern part of the state, so you get a little bit more from New England. Both shows, you can get some from Canada. So it's a new show, a quality show. New York really is known for the quality. It's going to always have these national show winners. It's just a great show. It was kind of an easy decision for the show committee to grant national show status for that show. And then this year, we approved the Wisconsin Dairy Showcase that's held in Madison, Wisconsin in August as a national show as well. We're really excited about that becoming a national show. You always want to have the best shows as national shows, and we believe that, I think the committee felt pretty strongly that this was a very easy show. It's one of the biggest attendance shows throughout the year, and it just made sense that this be a national show.
And I think it's cool to see what the Wisconsin Dairy Showcase has turned into over the last couple of years, adding, all other breeds now as well, and just getting more of that overall Midwestern involvement and even outside of that region as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to grow. I think it's only going to get bigger and stronger and probably be one of the premier shows of the summer.
For sure. Those national junior Holstein shows, I think, are a big part of what develops our youth in especially the Holstein side of our industry, right? But I do think that it's important to recognize how big of a role they do play. And how do you see these shows helping shape the skills and confidence in our young people as they grow in the dairy industry?
Yeah, and this is kind of a follow-up to a question you said earlier. One of the things that surprised you going to the shows, when you go to all these shows and you see all of these kids and their involvement, it really hits you. And the quality of the kids you're getting out, just, some of them are missing school, some of them are skipping athletic events because of this love for competition and camaraderie. It's just such a big part of our association. It's such an integral part of our industry. If we have one shining star with Holstein Association as our junior program, it is second to none, and you really see this in full effect at these national shows. I really do see, over the years that I've been in this role and watched kids kind of grow up, develop from where they're struggling to be able to lead a heifer in the ring to they're doing top lines and they're getting the animals ready. The focus on some of these kids as they hit their teen years is just amazing. I think it gives them a great outlet, an escape from the realities of some of the regular parts of their world to go to this community that we have with the shows.
Yeah, and I think over the last few years, we've seen an increase in workshops for the youth at these shows, making sure that we're cultivating the right skills and the right knowledge for these youth exhibitors to succeed in the ring.
Yeah, I think it's not just teaching kids how to show cattle, it's teaching kids how to feed cattle, things that they can take back home. One other point I wanted to mention, that with the junior program, we saw over 300 head at the International Junior Show at World Dairy Expo. By far the largest junior show we've ever had. It's actually, in comparisons with our other shows, it's the second largest show we have all year long, and it's a purely junior show. I think the quality of that show speaks for itself, and then all the kids that are involved is just really exciting.
Growing up in that side of the industry, showing a lot when I was younger, showing on the colored shavings for the first time, it was second to none in terms of the feelings that you felt, and obviously being fairly nervous, but also just the opportunity to do something like that and have your animal and yourself shown on a national scale.
Yeah, I never showed in the National Junior Show World Dairy Expo, but my daughter is now showing, and so she's gotten an opportunity to go out there a couple times, and being a parent, there's nothing better than that, and giving her those opportunities.
What kind of skills do you maybe see that she's developed just through her involvement in the National Junior Holstein Association as a whole, or with the shows as well?
Both of my kids are involved in showing. My daughter is 11 and son 8. So Luke, my son, is just starting and just getting excited about it. But I can say that there's a few things that I've noticed with our daughter's involvement. It really gives her a sense of responsibility that she wouldn't have otherwise. And then we've called it the game face. My daughter is very lighthearted and super friendly, but when she gets out in the ring, like, the lights turn on, and it's just super cool that she has something that motivates her, and we always call it the game face, and it's just great to see. And we hope that this helps her develop on through her junior career, helps her, through school. I think it also gives kids an opportunity to have a second set of friends. You have your friends in school and all of that. Well, she's got her show friends too, and so it's kind of like another group of people that she gets to relate to, and it's super cool.
One thing that I personally call back on to this day is when I was younger, I was showing at the Midwest Fall National, and somebody that I've known for a lot of years just told me to smile. In that moment, I kind of laughed about it, but looking back at it, it's something that's kind of stuck with me, is being able to smile through the intense feelings and whatever, and be able to enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it.
Yeah, definitely. We think she's enjoying it for sure, but sometimes the look on her face is, don't mess with me.
Yeah, for sure. I could definitely see that. So let's get into, the meat here a little bit more. Looking ahead to 2026, what are some of the key updates to the show program that we're seeing, and what went into the decision-making process behind some of these decisions?
So one of the things that the show committee came up with a few years ago was recommending that shows that are national shows use an associate judge. It's still not a required thing, but what we want to do is create sort of a mentorship program for seasoned judges to work with judges that you might call up and coming, to give them experience in the ring at the highest levels. So this started a few years ago. We've actually seen a lot of shows take this on. I think probably about 80% last year used an associate judge with these shows. One of the things we added on to this that we just were looking to clarify, that these associate judges needed to be on our current judges list, whether it be the national list or the approved list. So that is one change.
That probably comes with a lot of the, like you said earlier, increased involvement in the show, side of the industry. I do think we've seen a lot more animals in the ring at some of these shows. And for some of these judges, it can be hard to sort through those as just one person. So it's nice to have an associate there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, especially we get a lot of these. I think the winter calf class this year across the United States was just a gigantic class. And so it used to kind of be the fall calf class. And this year, for some reason, it was the winter calf class. And then it all capped off with the 60-plus at World Dairy Expo, where they're outside of the ring. World Dairy Expo typically always has an associate judge, but I think we saw Harrisburg with 50-plus winter calves, and you really need to have an associate judge out there just to keep the flow going, give everybody a good look.
That was definitely a good change coming from the show committee, for sure. The next thing that we're seeing a change in is these class changes. Kind of talk us through that, and maybe changes in the industry overall that are causing some of these.
So I think the show committee really wanted to take a look at the class list and make sure that we're keeping up with what's profitable cattle in the industry, and wanted to make sure that these are cohesive and where the industry is going. Having animals calve in earlier and earlier, that is something that benefits everybody. We wanted our class list to reflect that, and the show committee really felt strongly about this. The first thing they did was to remove the unfresh 2-year-old class. This was a class that was only being used by a few shows, typically in the spring. One, the attendance for these classes was not very strong, and that there was just not a need for this class. They also made the summer junior 2-year-old class a required class. This was an optional class before, and now it is required, as we see these summer junior 2-year-olds calving in earlier in the spring. There won't always be summer junior 2-year-olds at spring shows, but if there are, we want a class for them. With that, we added the milking winter yearling class, and it used to be the milking yearling class. Now it's the milking fall yearling class, and added an optional winter yearling class. So this is not a required class. Neither is the milking yearling class. Obviously, they can't be required classes because Our shows span from March to November. A lot of these animals are, not in milking form earlier in the spring, but we want to work in that. I think we had 2 or 3 milking winter yearlings showing in the milking yearling class at Expo. I think one was in the top 5 of the junior show. So these animals are calving in earlier. I do see that as we move forward, you're going to see that class start to fill in and be more of part of our shows.
I do think we've seen a large increase in the quality, of those classes, and splitting the winter yearling and fall yearling milking classes is a good reflection of just the overall industry changes that we're seeing, and the quality has just been amazing these last couple of years.
We're seeing a lot of attendance in these younger cow classes. Last year, of note, we did split the 2-year-old class up into the winter senior 2-year-old and the fall senior 2-year-old. And we ran stats on that to see how it went across, the year. And actually the numbers were quite good for those 2 classes throughout the year. There were some shows where, your fall 2-year-olds are getting awkward in stage of lactation where the numbers were down. But then you get to World Dairy Expo where a lot of these fall senior 2-year-olds are second calf cows now, and it kind of gets them away, the 2 from showing against each other, the first calf versus the second calf. But overall, the number of young milking cattle just continues to climb.
Yeah, and then I think that has something to do with also the next rule change. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we've moved the intermediate champion between the junior 3 and senior 3. Now, this is not a required movement because it's not going to work for every show. But one of the things that we wanted to do was make this optional. We're starting to get a bunch of new classes in the younger classes. And one of the things people have to keep in mind is if now you have a milking winter yearling class, keeping her bagged all the way to after the senior 3-year-old class for the intermediate champion, that's quite a while. And if you can move it up, that makes sense. And the other thing is now there's really only 4 classes beyond the intermediate champion with the 4s, 5s, and the 2 old cow classes. And so we're trying to balance the show out a little bit more if the shows feel that works for their show.
I think the quality and maturity maybe of the senior 3s has really changed quite a bit as well, and I think that probably fed into your decision.
Yeah, I think especially when you get to the fall, some of these cows are now third calf cows. That definitely is part of what the committee thought about when they made this decision.
And then let's talk a little bit about the slate of shows for 2026. What does that look like?
So we still have approved the 12 from 2025 and then added the Wisconsin show. So we'll be up to 13 shows. Of note, I did want to mention that attendance at shows across the board was at an all-time high. We had over 2,500 entries in our 12 shows last year, which was up almost 500 from the year before. We did add 1 show into that, but attendance was up. We actually saw 5 or 6 shows were the highest attended since COVID. So things are trending in a positive direction with shows. There's certainly as much enthusiasm in this industry as we've ever seen, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah, I think that pertains to what you said about the junior program as well, and just getting more juniors involved, but just more people involved in general. I think sometimes more adults get involved, the more some of their kids maybe want to get involved or whatever the case is on that end. But I think that kind of plays into it as well.
Yeah, and our junior attendance for our junior shows is as strong as ever. Like I mentioned, World Dairy Expo with 300 entries in the junior show. So I only see that growing. You definitely see enthusiasm continue to build.
Now we're going to take a quick break to hear from Holstein Association USA.
Do you know a Junior Holstein Association member who goes above and beyond? Someone who's passionate about registered Holsteins and making an impact in the dairy industry? If you or someone you know fits that description, consider applying for Holstein Association USA's Distinguished Junior Member Program. The DJM program recognizes young people who show leadership, knowledge, and commitment to the Holstein breed. Applicants share their experiences through a portfolio and short videos, and semifinalists are invited to the National Holstein Convention for interviews and recognition. If you'll be between 17 and 20 years old on January 1st, 2026,
This is the opportunity to tell your Holstein story. Applications are due March 1st, 2026. Learn more and find everything you need to know about the DJM program and the National Junior Holstein Association at www.juniorholstein.com.
And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. Tim, one key event that you work on every year is the National Judges Conference, as well as facilitating the National Judges List. Explain what the Judges Conference and Judges List are in case people are not aware.
Absolutely. Let's start with the Holstein Association Judges List. The Judges List has been around for roughly about 15 years. The Judges List was created to sort of vet judges who are quality judges, meet the expectations of being a good dairy cattle judge, and then meet the standards of professionalism as well. Currently, we have what we call the National Judges List and then the Qualified Judges List. A recent change we made a couple of years back was to make this more of a transparent process of who makes what list. So the current National Judges List is judges who have judged a state open Holstein show within the last 10 years, and that puts them on the national list. And then our qualified list would be judges who have attended our judges conference and make a qualified rating in that judges conference. This list is a use for our National Holstein shows, so all National Holstein open shows have to pick from the national list, and then junior shows can pick from either list. The prerequisite for the judges list is to attend a national judges conference every 5 years. And then that gets us into the Judges Conference and what that is. So the Judges Conference is a rotating conference. We move across the country every 5 years into the same spots. And we use this as a workshop to do a bunch of different things with the judges. We're trying to build skills as far as judging. We do classes of cattle, place them, give reasons. But we've also added a workshop ahead of time where we kind of talk about things such as professionalism, anything from how to handle when you are asked to judge a show, how you communicate with that show, things to do, things not to do, stay off of social media if you're judging a show, make sure you're not commenting on those types of things. And then we also just kind of do a little bit of a group talk using some of our more seasoned judges that are attending to give some background to less experienced judges. And then we've added in the last 2 years a linear portion, and we bring in a Holstein USA classifier, and we just kind of dive into a few more trait-related things, how we analyze traits and how those relate to the Showring.
I think those standards that you talked about for professionalism led us to, we have recently released this Judges Code of Conduct, am I correct?
Yep, absolutely. This last year we came up with what we call the Judges Code of Conduct. And this kind of lays out the expectations for judges. So we start off kind of looking at judges who judge any show, some guidelines, just professionalism, things to do, things not to do, if you're judging any show across the country. And then we kind of get more specific, more granular with what our expectations are of judges who judge national shows, whether it be avoid conflicts of interest in reality. I don't believe these are anything that are crazy or things that you wouldn't think of. It just puts it down on a paper of general things that we think should be followed if you're going to have the honor of judging a national show. We also kind of present a portal to make an objection about a certain judge that then the show committee will take a look at and decide if what the infraction is serious enough and how the show committee would handle those infractions. So we're getting some things on paper and a process down, and hopefully we will not encounter any issues, but if issues do come up, we're now setting some standards in how we're going to deal with those.
Yeah, and I think those rules that are laid out in that code of conduct then help ensure the integrity of the national shows.
Yeah, I think it just gives some guidelines and some things that maybe were unwritten rules in the past and just making them written rules. And, if someone says, I didn't like how this went down or this just seemed not right, well, now there's something to say, hey, does this meet a guideline with a national show? And if it doesn't, then someone can formally write something up to us and then the show committee can take a look at it.
I think it definitely gives an outlet, and it helps the show managers even be able to have an outlet to make sure that their voices are heard when it comes to that kind of stuff as well.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of the Judges Conference, what are some of the success stories that you've seen?
Conferences in the last few years have become really popular. We've averaged between 50 and 80 attendees. So you get a wide range of experiences. So I think the real success stories come naturally in these conferences from judges that are seasoned veterans. Gives them an opportunity to probably discuss some things, that get some things off their chest or discuss things. And then the people who maybe have only judged county fairs or maybe not judged at all, gives them some real feedback, from these judges.
Do you see a lot of mentorship between the judges at the conference, between some of the veterans and some of the newcomers?
It's a kind of a natural progression. I always sit back and kind of watch the younger judges. And in New York, at Oakfield Corners, Callum McKinnon was there, and just to be able to hear Callum talk about his experiences and questions that he was being asked from our judges panel, and watch, the younger people kind of identify with some of the things a person like Callum was saying, or other judges who've, judged on the biggest stages.
I've heard a lot of things about this judges panel. Do you think that kind of makes the Judges Conference a must-attend event for some of these aspiring judges?
I'm really happy with the group of judges we've had in the past. They're not always going to be the same, but we always are working with judges that we feel have the character to lead and the experience and have judged the larger shows. People like Paul Trapp, Mark Reef, Lynn Harbaugh, Molly Sloan, Jamie Black have all been part of our panels in the recent years. And obviously those are household names of people who have judged big shows and big stages and give great perspective as to what that is like.
I know the details maybe aren't set in stone yet for 2026, but what does the 2026 Judges Conference look like in terms of what you know so far?
So we're just in the early stages of planning 2026 Judges Conference. The area of the country it will be in is the West, likely California. We were there back in 2020, so 2026 we're back there again. Some of the things also I wanted to bring up about the Judges Conference and how we've changed them, and some of the things that I feel also make them must-see events is typically in the past we have had these conferences at shows. So you have cattle that are there at a show. It makes it a little challenging to judge them without milking the udder. We have a lot of people who are at the shows that are working their cattle. It's always hard for them to break away from the routine to spend a whole day at this judges conference. So we've tried to move this away from shows into an on-farm experience. We've had the last two judges conference. We were at Quiet Cove in Ohio this past year in 2025, and then in 2024 we were at Oakfield Corners in New York. A couple of the really unique things that we're doing at these now is we're making these cattle showring ready. So bag, clip, top lines are done, and it really creates that genuine experience of being at a show, where instead of in the past you're like, well, you're judging cows in the middle of the day with no milk in their udder. It's just a totally different experience.
Does that on-farm experience maybe bring something else to the Judges Conference that you haven't, seen before, even from a national show?
Yeah, I think the on-farm experience, we've been blessed with just amazing cattle. Both places that we've been to, Quiet Cove and Oakfield Corners, we've judged national level cattle in their prime. At Oakfield Corners, we had a class of cows of all household names, and so it's kind of unique experience when people have to go out there and place a group of 94, 95, 96, 97 point cattle. You can see the stress on some of these judges. It turns the tension up a little bit for sure. And then the other part of it is we give reasons at these conferences. So anybody who is not on the national list has to give a set of reasons. We call it the putting you over the edge point. If you can get up in front of your peers and everybody who's there doing the same thing, trying to better their judging skills and speak a set of reasons in front of them, you're going to be able to do this anywhere. This is going to be one of the more difficult and more challenging things you'll ever do. And you see the tension when the people get to the mic and do this in front of their peers. It's kind of a unique experience. We would love to have everyone give a set of reasons, but like I said, we're hitting, almost 70 people in some of these, and we just can't get everybody to the mic. We're dealing now with cows that are bagged. We don't want the cows sitting out there for 2 hours. We take all these things into consideration.
For sure. I think it sounds like we probably bring some of these judges back to their collegiate judging days or 4-H judging days, where there's a little bit higher nerves for some of these events.
Yeah, it definitely creates an atmosphere where everyone, they're competitive, but it's definitely a challenging experience for some of these judges to do this. And we want this to be challenging. We want this to be a learning experience. This is why we think that this creates better judges and a list of people that any show can pick from, because we've had them go through this process.
I think, too, it's important to recognize some of the judges and where they've come to today. The judges for World Dairy Expo 2026 were just announced recently, and it seems to be the first domino that falls for the show season. And what excites you most about people like Ben Wallace and Ryan Crollo that are judging the International Junior Holstein Show and Open Holstein Show at World Dairy Expo this coming year?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously excited that they're on our judges list. That's number one. So I'm excited that both of these judges have been active participants in our judges list and our judges conferences. Ben actually went to Oakfield Corners 2 years back. This was his first time, applying for the judges list. He drove all the way out with Dave Schmacher, made the road trip, and Ben can speak for himself, but I think that he was giving us some positive feedback on the program, that it helped him out with his career, got him going. Now he's judged a lot of shows around Wisconsin and other parts. He's also been the associate for Ryan Crollo, who we're next to mention, at the Northeast Spring National. So he got that experience also with Ryan. And is going to as many shows as I do, you're going to come across Ryan judging shows all over. I can't count the number of times where I've been at a national show that Ryan's judging. Ryan's always acts with class and does a great job with judging shows. So we're really excited that both of these are judging at the highest stage.
Every show obviously has a high standard for the judges that they then present for their show. But I do think it's cool every year to learn what judges are doing what shows, and maybe just increasing the hype for that show and get a little bit of buzz around it, just to talk a little bit about how that show might shape up come the time of that show. Then beyond the judges conference and the hype for World Dairy Expo, what else has you excited as we move into 2026?
To be honest, I'm always kind of just interested to see how class changes are going to take over next year. Adding the winter senior 2-year-old class last year was kind of like the big watch for 2025. I kind of watched that throughout the year. We actually break down numbers for all the shows and present these to the show committee just to show them trends we're seeing, and changes to the classes will affect the shows for 2026. But again, our shows are always great, and that's part of what makes this all exciting in the first place. So to be honest, the most exciting part of this is going back, seeing the people that you saw last year, and then seeing new cows, how a cow came back from last year, how a heifer calved in. Those are always the exciting things in the spring. You're always looking for trends in bulls and saying, hey, this is the new bull that's making them in the heifers. Are they going to make cows? Those are all the questions that make, I think, every person involved in the show industry excited about always looking into 2026. I think all of us who are involved in this industry, it's the middle of winter, but we've already turned the page to next year, and we're already getting ready for that 2026 campaign.
Yeah, I've even seen some of the breeders throughout the country posting even some classification highlights and things that they're excited about for this next year. And I think the buzz around that always just makes it fun talking about the show side of the industry. So I'm glad that you joined me, and I really thank you for sharing all of these stories and insights with me and the listeners here today. Before we wrap up, I do have some questions for you. I know you've done this before, but today I have a special Showring edition of Would You Rather. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
First one. Would you rather attend a Western or Eastern region National Holstein Show, or Central for that matter?
So I'm not going to pick territories at all. I mentioned before, Harrisburg has great milkshakes, so I do love their milkshakes. And then, we actually don't have as many shows out in the western part of the country, and so I don't know if you get a chance to go to Richmond, Utah. I highly recommend it. The scenery around you're probably not going to beat that really any other place in the country. So yeah, I'm gonna split the middle there.
And if you've listened to the Holstein Marketplace Sires episode of the podcast, you know that Tim is a little bit of a sit-on-the-fence person when it comes to these Would You Rather questions.
Thanks.
Second question, would you rather be the first in the ring or the last one in for a class?
That's also kind of hard. So I'm going to say that, like, if you're in the ring first, you probably have an underaged animal. So I use that, like, that's to your benefit. You got the short-aged animal that's really, really good. So I guess I'll say first in the ring.
Would you rather lead your animal or actually be prepping for the next?
That is actually, I will not sit on the fence on that one. I will be prepping the next. I don't really love leading in the ring, partially because every time I come back, every family member will tell me everything I did wrong out there. They say that I like to, it kind of goes with my job with this, I like to watch the show, and they say that I constantly am looking at the rest of the animals and not my own. So yeah, I'll be prepping the next one.
So let's just make sure that Claire knows to keep her eye on her animal.
Yeah, she does all right with that.
Next one, haul across the country or fly internationally for a show?
I think that's pretty easy as well. I'm going to be flying to an international show. I've done the hauling. I originally from New York, so we did those trips to World Area Expo back when I was in college and post-college. I can tell you those were always fun yet terrifying. I do think at some point somebody needs to document those trips, whether it be from East Coast and West Coast, and kind of take a camera crew with them and just see the things that you have to do to move cattle across the country. It's amazing the things that we do as an industry to show cattle and to get to one spot in the middle of the country. I think that's fascinating, but I've been able to go to some shows internationally, whether it be in Australia or Swiss Expo. I'll take those trips, yeah.
Okay, last one. Win a banner yourself, and be careful with this one, or help a young exhibitor have their best ever show.
I mean, I think I'm supposed to say help a young exhibitor. I'm gonna split the middle on this one again because I actually, as now a parent, I much prefer seeing my children's success rather than my own. It's way more gratifying than, the success that you have yourself, but probably more of them just being part of what you're doing. And then when it comes to other juniors, like I mentioned before, you watch other juniors grow and develop, and so any chance that we can be a part of that is just a great opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for doing that with me, Tim. And with that, we are going to close out today's episode of the Holstein Connections podcast. For more information on the National Show Program or the Holstein USA Judges Conference, visit holsteinusa.com. Also, be sure to tune in to all episodes of the Holstein Connections podcast, including Tim's Holstein Marketplace Sires episode, and keep a lookout for new episodes every other Thursday.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Holstein Connections. Whether you're in the barn, on the road, or just tuning in for your dose of dairy news, we're glad you're here. Until next time, this is Holstein Connections.